And it should be good to go here in 1 second.
So get this, I went to the wrong link.
I've done that before.
What? I did
Yeah.
have to change it on this one because it was the old link on our
Oh,
notes,
okay.
Esther.
Yeah, I noticed. Thanks for
I
Yeah,
was
noticing.
like,
no,
oh, change that
I'm
quick.
in.
And we
Yeah.
are live.
Yay. Welcome everybody to our new teacher Zoom. Whether you're new or not, we're glad that you're here and with us.
Let's start today in prayer and then we'll get into a little bit about what we will talk about for today. Dear God, thank you for this time to come together and share ideas. We ask that it is helpful to those who are listening. We are thankful this time of year for the gift of your son, especially during the time where the church year allows us to think about what he's done for us and the sins that we need to have forgiven through his works and what he did for us here on earth. All this we pray in your name. Amen.
Amen.
So today we're kind of jumping in a little bit more about Holy Week, what's going on with Easter breaks, parent conferences, whether you have a third quarter one or even if you don't. End of the year is coming up, so kind of making preparations if you're doing any special things for that, like end of the year countdowns. Lots of places it's starting to get warm again. Wisconsin, it was getting there, and then last night we got a snowstorm, so we're back to snow on the ground, but a little bit of that spring fever happening anyways. And then standardized testing season, and just kind of integrating those warmer days with what you still need to get done at the end of the year.
So the first thing we'll talk about is Holy Week. This year, our Holy Week is later in the school year than last year was, which is really nice because it's easier for me as a religion teacher to teach about it before it happens. Um, I like to teach the religion lessons from our curriculum first, and then the week of I take a break from the curriculum and we do special activities both as a school and as a class to dig even deeper into what Holy Week means. One of those things that we do is we make a Holy Week foldable where we talk about each day of the week, starting with Palm Sunday. So there will be some school days where we do 2 days in order to get all of them. And we'll name the day in English, we'll name the day in Spanish, we'll name the Bible references to that day, and the students will draw a picture or rip up paper to symbolize something for that day, like a palm branch or empty tomb. And then if they want to summarize it, then further they can. And so we do that. And then when we're doing it, we read the Bible verses, we compare the accounts, and it's a really good take home thing for them to share with their parents as well as a devotion that they can do for Easter with their families. Another devotional that we do is we do resurrection eggs. These we start earlier than Holy Week, and you can get them online. You can make them your own. All it is a plastic egg with something in it that represents part of the resurrection story. And usually they come along with a devotion. You can search online and then make it your own, or you can buy one. But my kids really like it and they're interested in seeing what symbol's going to be next. Sometimes I've had the kids all make their own to take home with families. When I had a family that donated all of their old Easter eggs, it was enough for us to make class or make individual sets and send them home. Other times I've had kids just make it on a piece of paper where they draw an Easter egg on one side and then draw the symbol on the other and then write the Bible reference to it. And then you don't even have to have individual as well. You can just do it as a class too. Other things my school does, we do a mini Seder supper where we all gather in one of our gyms, and our superintendent and some teachers and fellow students will lead us through the meaning of the Seder supper. And then they'll explain the Christian significance. Now that we know that Jesus is raised from the dead, what do all these symbols mean through that lens. And we have a service of darkness, and the third graders put on a service called From the Cradle to the Cross. And our student council does symbols of Lent. So we always, every single day, we meet as a school to do something for Holy Week, which is really special to get the whole student body and teacher body involved.
Yeah, I think overall it's just kind of a time of year that there's a lot going on in the church year, and schools try to kind of bring that into the school side as well. So if you're maybe not sure if anything's going on leading up to that, it's definitely something to kind of maybe ask a mentor teacher or bring up maybe at the next staff meeting, just so that you kind of know for your own plans. And maybe if there's not a whole lot going on, being able to take some of like Esther's ideas and implementing them into your own classroom to make that time a little bit more special leading into Easter for your kids in your class.
Mm-hmm. And then after Easter, I suggest having an Easter party. A lot of people celebrate Easter just with egg hunts at schools, but there's so much more that you can do that's biblically related. So we have an Easter party for our fourth graders, and they create palm psalms. So they have a palm branch and do some art with it. I'm not going to go too in depth with it because it's a process. And then they write their own psalm or their own poem about Easter on the palm branches. So that's one thing they look forward to doing every year. And it's a fun time to have an Easter party. It gives them something to look forward to after spring break, besides the end of the school year.
And then kind of thinking about Easter break, a lot of your churches will be trying to kind of include or incorporate your students into some of the services of Holy Week. So if your kids are singing at a service or participating, I know at my church there's typically a youth-led service where they kind of go through the story of Easter. They kind of do a similar one, I believe, around Christmas time, where they have children actors and the kids are reading the different parts of the Bible story. So if there's things like that, go and be involved, be seen, support that. It kind of means a lot to those families in your community. But it's also a break. So making sure that you're using it as a time to take time for you and your family. And it's kind of your last break typically before the end of the school year. So it's kind of that last little bit of rejuvenation so that you can make it to the end of the year. So it's definitely important to spend some time filling your own cup back up so that you're able to pour back out of it for the rest of the school year. Keeping that in mind, you want it as a break for you, so it should also be a break for your students. We've said this for other breaks before. Typically, it's best to do no homework over the breaks. Give them an actual break from school. They probably need it, especially with some of that spring fever probably happening. They're kind of sensing the end of the year. They need that little brain break. So if you're able, which you most likely are, to kind of take a break from whatever homework patterns you've been in. And then just when you're coming back from break, if you were in the middle of something, just plan in a few review days. I know I'll leave in the middle of my 2D shape unit, which is not, brain science or anything like that. So it's a pretty easy one to kind of leave hanging, but then we'll do a little extra review before we have our test that week we come back, just to get them back in the flow. Instead of doing like their test the day we're back, we'll kind of throw in a little extra fun and review, making it an easier transition.
Mm-hmm. I really like that you mentioned no homework over break. I like to stress this with my fourth graders and explain why I don't assign homework over break. And that's so that they can spend devotional time with their families and they can come to church without, being distracted by other things that I'm having them do. And I want them to spend time with their families and having fun because that is foundational to them as part of growing up. And it's foundational to us as well, just as human beings and adults, to be in community with other faithful people. So another thing in spring is parent-teacher conferences. Some schools mandate these around the end of third quarter or around the spring. Some schools have it optional, and other students or other schools just have you reach out to families whenever you need to. So if you do not have mandatory parent-teacher conferences at this time of year, and there are parents that you need to share information with, especially before the school year is over or before they go on to the next grade level, you need to have those conversations now. You're able to tell right now, it's a good time to be able to tell parents what you've seen since Christmas break and tell them if a student needs extra help in the summer. It gives them time to sign up their kids for a program if they need to do that or find a tutor. It also gives parents time to look for what they want to do with their children. If they want to get an extra curriculum book and work through it with their child, or whatever. And then it's also a very important time to say what areas the student is excelling in, as well as what areas that you're concerned about, especially if the students are making a jump from preschool to kindergarten. At this point in the year, our preschool teachers have had the conversations with families about which students should probably repeat or be given the gift of time, especially for that jump. And so if you haven't had those conversations, I would talk to another coworker of yours or your director or principal to see what standards the students really should be reaching before they go on to the next grade level, if your student or if your school has standards like that.
And it's also even sometimes helpful to just talk to the teachers in the grade above you. They probably have a list of 2 or 3 things that are like their key things for the kid to come in and be successful in their classroom. They have to be able to A, B, and C. And it kind of helps you narrow down that list of not only are those kids meeting those standards and are they going to be ready according to that teacher, but it's also something for you even going into next year, or maybe to really focus on at the end of this year, things that you want to make sure that you're fostering in your students to help them be successful in that next grade, whether or not they're struggling. Like, I know for first grade, we've talked to our kindergarten teachers, like we really need them to understand handwriting lines and how those work. Like more than just what a letter looks like, how does that look on a handwriting line? Which isn't necessarily a standard that your school maybe has, but it makes a big difference in the classroom. So that's why I would encourage you to at least talk to that other teacher as well.
That's good. We call that, when we're talking with the grade level above us and below, so we call those up and down meetings. And those are really, really helpful in understanding how much of something we should be emphasizing across the subjects. We've been much more intentional about that this year, and it's made a big difference in our teaching and planning. Another thing to think about throughout the whole school year, but also now, if there are any doctor recommendations or forms that are needed, make sure that you're filling them out and getting them back to parents. I've noticed that I feel like I get a lot more of them in the spring, for whatever reason, I guess to set them up for the next school year, or to redo paperwork, because in the state I teach in Florida, you get a certain amount of money based on the paperwork, to help you go to the school of your choice. And so they need to keep that updated. And even though this is one of the busiest times of school for a lot of people, you have to prioritize that, because that's part of your job and it's part of getting the students the help that they need. And if you don't feel comfortable just filling it out without talking with parents, you can ask them to meet with you, and then you can flesh out your ideas better, and then you can fill it out and send it to the doctor.
It's also a time of year that you might have meetings or reports that you have to fill out for students who have been receiving services that school year. As they come to the end of the year, there's typically like an end of the year meeting that will then either like end those resources for the next year if they've met their goals or restart them for the next year. So it could even just be reports that are more like for a speech meeting or something like that, but they typically do ask about the child as a whole, not just that specific thing. So thinking about what you would need to fill out for that.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's also the time of year that you are probably preparing for standardized testing if that is something going on in your classroom. One important thing is that if you can provide parents with the testing dates ahead of time, ours is on our school calendar from as soon as it gets released. We know what days we'll be doing our forward exams is what we have to take here in Wisconsin since we're a choice school. So they're on there the whole time. And a big piece of that is to help encourage parents to maybe not go on vacation and take their kids out of school those days because some standardized testing will require the whole school to be done within X amount of time. So once we've started them, everybody has to get through. And a non-finished test can, in our case, for the kind of test we're taking, hurts our school score. So if you don't have those kinds of dates on your school calendar, whether or not it's one that could hurt your overall school score, it's still way nicer to have all your kids in class and get it all done in one fell swoop than trying to find time here and there to piece together a test from a kid who was missing. It also allows parents to know, hey, this is a week that my kid needs to be getting enough sleep. They need to be eating a good breakfast. They need to be around things that are encouraging them, giving them a good mindset, maybe an extra little note in their lunchbox or whatever it is. They can be long days for kids. I luckily am in a grade that I don't have to be doing the testing, but I know upstairs with our older grades, it is long days. And by Friday, the kids are so bored of it. So I think a big piece of it too is finding things in your classroom and the breaks between the tests that can kind of be little pieces of encouragement, maybe kind of out of the norm from what they would normally do, maybe an extra little recess time outside if the weather is nice, or you bring them a snack. A lot of good healthy things like fruits or granola bars, things that are going to help power them through the next thing that they have to do. Nobody loves standardized tests. I know I didn't like them growing up. I don't like it when I have to give them at school when I have had to, but they're a thing that's a necessity. So finding the ways to make it a little less mundane and maybe add some excitement into the day is always helpful to the kiddos who are stuck there taking them.
Mm-hmm. You've mentioned a lot of really good things for testing week. I also like to make sure I have a sign ready for my doors that says that we are testing because I am by a very frequently used outside door. And so it can get loud as people are transitioning from outside to inside. But when they see that sign, they're much more respectful of it. And that helps my students focus. And it's simple. You just draw one with marker or you print one and it's easy. I also like to encourage them that they're not expected to know everything on the test. They're expected to do their best because it shows me and other teachers what we have accomplished so far this year, and also shows us where we should stress things in future years as well. So it's good data for us, but they're not graded on it. And that letting some students know that they're not graded on it eases their anxiety for it. Whereas other students take it very lackadaisically if they know that they're not graded. And so, figure out what your students need. If they need that encouragement to do their best or the encouragement to not worry, or both, your students the best. So read them out and make sure you're praying with them before they take the test. And if you don't already do that before tests, I encourage you to start, because if you can start that healthy habit now, then hopefully as they grow up, they can do it on their own naturally before they start a test, to ease their anxiety and to ask God to give them the wisdom that they need to take this test and to calm their nerves.
Mhm. You mentioned all the data that comes from the tests, and it made me think about, well, I don't necessarily give a standardized test to my kids in my classroom. That doesn't mean I ignore all of the scores that come in after our kids in the upper grades have taken them. Because especially like for us, our lowest grade is third grade who takes the specific test. But I still look at third grades because if there's holes that multiple of their kids are missing, those are things that in the grades before that, if you can drive that home more or make sure that somewhere in those grades leading up to it that it's being hit, that can make a big difference too. So standardized testing isn't necessarily just what's happening in your own classroom, but it's also looking at it as a whole, even if it's outside of your grade level.
That's great teamwork that you guys have. I love that.
We try. Doesn't always work, but we do try.
It's wonderful. Also, this is a perfect time of year to take a look at your curriculum maps or your standards if you haven't looked at them in a while. And then as you plan for fourth quarter, keep those missing standards in mind. You might not be able to do it all. So talk with the teachers, again, above you or below you, to know exactly what you need to prioritize, especially with the year above you, so that your students are set up for success in the next grade level. Sometimes so I teach fourth grade, and sometimes fifth grade reteaches a lot of the same stuff. So I can better know what to focus on, what building blocks they need, and what I can go a little faster with as well.
And I would say too that if the grade below you doesn't reach out to you, don't feel afraid or like you're overstepping to just go have a conversation with them about, hey, where are your kids at? Like, where are they at? How do you think it's going? Um, just because they're not reaching out to you doesn't mean that you can't reach out and at least have things on your radar or put things on theirs. It should be an open conversation either way. And the reality is, well, this is a time of year that a lot of those conversations are natural because you're getting towards the end of this year, you're kind of thinking about the next year. These conversations are conversations that should be happening all year. Knowing kind of, oh, these are the kids that they're watching, or oh, can we make sure this next teacher knows, hey, this kid, is struggling here, like this is what we're working on with them. The more that you know about the kids you're getting and the more that you know about the kids that you're kind of giving away the next year, the smoother transition for those kids and those parents as well.
Mm-hmm. And then it's not just a time to think about your students' education, but yours as well.
Woo!
So if you're student teaching right now, or you're teaching for the first time in a state, or like teaching in a state different from where you got certified, you might need to figure out what it takes for you to stay certified or to get certified beyond a temporary license. So you might have some more tests to take, and you'll need to schedule those before the cutoffs. So, for example, in Florida, where I teach, you need to get recertified before June, and it can take a month to get test results before you can file for a professional certificate. So, you have to make sure to schedule your tests well before that. It's also a good time to submit your professional education hours if you haven't been submitting them all year. It's time to look those files up and submit them. Mm-hmm. A lot of schools will submit them for you if you give them to someone, but make sure that somebody is filing them. So talk with the administrators at your school or HR at your school and see who is responsible for submitting your professional development hours, because you might need a lot of them, so every single one counts. Mm-hmm. You can also look online for free options, or for options that are close to you to go to that you can take over the summer. Sometimes it's easier to take classes in the summer. Other times it's easier to take a break over the summer. So make your plan according to whatever you need, but make a plan to get those done, because we need you guys to stay certified, because we need you guys to keep teaching.
And even
everyone
if
does.
you've been teaching in the same state for a few years, making sure whether or not you're getting ready or close to that time that you need to re-up your license is important also. And even that can take a while, even if there's not a whole lot you have to submit. Like I had to redo mine for this school year, and Wisconsin makes it pretty much as easy as it can possibly be. Like I had to submit one paper that my principal signed. And it still took almost a month for them to finally get through that paperwork and me get my next license that I'm on this year. So even if it seems like a super easy process, don't push it off. It takes forever because that's what they do. So make sure you just plan ahead, even if maybe you've been set, just double check, see where it's at, make sure you're aware of when yours expires and what you need to do next.
And for those of you who are like Michaela and I, who have gotten married somewhat recently, we had to make sure that our name got updated for our certificates as well, which again was pretty easy, but it can take time.
Mm-hmm.
So make sure that that's on your checklist if that applies to you.
And then kind of, light at the end of the tunnel, end of your countdowns. There's a lot of different ideas out there. For first grade, I keep it really simple. We use little pictures kind of with numbers on them to count up to the 100th day of school. And then we kind of sit with 100 up there for a while until we're down to like 50 days of school. And now we're slowly taking them off towards the end of the year, kind of using that now as a backwards countdown. There's also ones where I've seen people hang up balloons in their classroom and then kids get to pick to pop one each day and they kind of see the amount of balloons shrinking. And then sometimes in the balloons, there's like a surprise that they get to do that day. So you could really leave it up to chance and, whatever balloon is popped, that's what you get to do that day. You'd be a little bit more lax than I would be, but you could also number the balloons and pop a certain one so you know what each day would be. There's also the ABC countdown. That one I used when I taught kindergarten, and our kindergarten teachers still use it. So when I did it, we started at A, and the last day of school was Z. Our current kindergarten teachers do it the opposite way. We start at Z and work backwards to A. So they kind of use each letter of the alphabet to influence whatever the theme for that day is. Like Q, I think, was Queen and King's Day last year. When I had Z be the last day of school, it was Zoom out of school. So some of them you get to be a little creative about. A could be Animal Day. And you can kind of stretch it as far as you want. Do they just bring a stuffed animal to read with? Or do you want them dressing up as animals? So kind of a fun way for those last 26 days of school to have something a little special mixed into each day. The biggest thing is picking something that works for you and is manageable in your classroom and allows you to still get the things done that you're needing to get done for the rest of the school year. If you need materials, this is one that parents will most likely be excited to help with because it's going to create memories for their kid. So don't feel like you can't send out a sign-up sheet or something like that for them to donate some of those materials if you don't have them already.
Mm-hmm. At the end of the year, I like to do some fun things like this too, but I also have a dress where students add their own fingerprint to it. It started off as handprints, but it's been a few years and there wasn't much more room. So now it's thumbprints. And it helps me remember all of my students and that they've touched my life and hopefully I've touched theirs too. So it's a dress and it has like paint all over it. And I like to wear that on the last day of school usually, as a fun way to remember all of the students.
That's cute.
And the kids look forward to me wearing it, which is
I've
fun.
seen people do like white shoes too that the class will
Yes.
help decorate or stuff like that. Yeah, it's a cute idea.
Yeah, it's fun. And we've mentioned a little bit about spring fever before in this session. So right now, if the weather is pleasing enough, take your class outside, or if the lesson allows you to, even if you just read outside or play a little game or have a brain break outside, that'll really boost the morale of your students, and probably yourself too. You can use outside as a break. You can use it as a learning activity. We have an outdoor classroom, so I can teach lessons out there. So even in January, we were doing at least one lesson out there a month because I live in Florida. So it's a little bit easier to do that.
We were inside all of winter up here in Wisconsin, other than recess, where you have to put everything on to go outside.
Oh man, oh man. And I think I misspoke too. We not only did it once a month, we did it at least once a week.
I wish.
Yeah, yeah. It's all about where you are. And it's been really, really nice to take them outside, especially in spring before it gets too hot for us, because soon it's going to be too hot where they're going to be miserable to go outside. And open up the windows if you can, or at least open up the shades or the blinds. Let the students enjoy spring. I know my campus right now smells really good and it looks really pretty with everything blooming. And so I like to use those senses and explain to them and just share the joy about God's creation right now. And the kids get really into it too. Like, do you know this plant? Oh, I don't, but maybe we can look it up and see what it is. So I love sharing those little moments of outside and just taking pleasure in what God has given us to grow around us.
And I think too, sometimes with that spring fever, it can help the kids if they know you kind of feel it too. Like, it is nice outside, and I really want to be outside too, but guess what? We've got stuff we have to do, but recess, we can hang out and whatever. So kind of using it as a way to relate to those kids instead of just being like, yeah, whatever, like we still have stuff, like don't ignore it. The fact is it's there. Use it as a way to connect with those kids is what I would say.
Yeah. And keep your lessons fun and interesting. Don't give up on using your creative side right now, because now is when the kids need it most of all.
Yeah, definitely.
Well, that's all that we have planned to share for today's New Teachers Zoom. I wonder if there are any questions. Let me look this up real quick.
I was watching for questions in chat, but I don't see any. And I know that we have several viewers on, Will was telling me on X, I believe it is, but I'm not sure we have any questions there. Great information today. I had to chuckle at the keep your teaching certificate up to date. I'm in the midst of renewing mine right now.
Oh, nice.
Good times, but great advice, especially, enjoy, right? Give time for the families to enjoy being together. And it's not just about the students and, oh no, I have homework, but that puts a lot of pressure on the parents and stuff as well. And now how are we going to get together? And it's after a blizzard in Nebraska and Iowa yesterday and a couple places, people are ready for spring. So take advantage of that as well. Good to enjoy the weather when it's outside and allow the students. You talked about Esther, you guys have a great outdoor play space, and that's really nice. I think, Michaela, your outdoor play space is probably Packer Stadium there, right?
Pretty close, pretty close.
It's not far away. But it's a great idea too. If you don't have one, think about that as a possibility in a project maybe down the road, because that's a great place to utilize as a teacher and for the students to grow and play and socialization and all those soft skill areas as well that we talked about. Great ideas. And Easter is just around the corner, isn't it? So hard to
Yeah.
believe how quickly
1
the
month
school year can
away.
go. Great job.
Well, thank you.
Thanks.
And thank you everyone for watching. We appreciate it. As always, if you come up with any questions for us, feel free to post them. Michaela and I mostly check the LCMS school ministry one on Facebook, but feel free to post it wherever and hopefully we'll see it.
We pay them to do that. We keep them engaged on our social media site to check all those good things. Thanks for the shout out. We'll give you, extra items at the next educators conference.
I have plenty, but it's always fun.